It's very interesting presentation by President Harper touching on, I thought, many of the themes that were also reflected earlier in the day. Is that your business? I did want to observe before going a tad further that on the issue of AI training and skills gap, there's a very interesting report for those of you who may want to take a look at it from McKinsey called Lost Jobs Report, December 2017, which gives this news. 58% of the AI training jobs gap education will be done by 58% by employers, 18% by government, 5% by workers themselves, and 5%, only 5% by higher ed. That's all higher ed, community college, four-year colleges, research universities. So, thank you, Jill. So, to the extent we can make lemonade out of lemons, there is an opportunity out there in that area. But anyway, so this session is the counter-side of the question: what business and government need and want from higher education in the next 5 years, using 5 years as a lens on this. And we have a great panel for you today, and again, their bios are in their booklet, but Victor Crawford, to my immediate left, is the Chief Operating Officer of Healthcare Facilities and Higher Ed at Aramark, and we're so pleased to have you, Victor, and please, we enjoy your remarks.
Thank you. I guess I'll turn this on. Well, I think even before you invited me, you probably didn't know this about me, but I get a chance to experience higher education in a lot of different ways. One, from a business perspective, but also as a potential client and consumer. I've got 6 daughters. One graduated from Fordham, one graduated at University of Michigan, and I have a sophomore down the street at Penn. And I've got a senior in high school that she'll be in college next year. So the next 5 years, I got 11-year-olds who will be in college in the next 5 years. So I have a pretty unique seat to talk about this particular topic. But one of the things that I did want to talk about, and I appreciate the remarks from the president a little earlier here, we're in the people business. Most people know Aramark as a food company, and we do serve a lot of food, but we employ 270,000 people. So we are absolutely in the people business. We hire about 70,000 hourly employees. So when we talk about some of the lower end folks, we hire about 70,000 of those folks a year, and we hire about 8,000 salaried employees a year. And a lot of these are college grads, and I'll spend a little time talking about that. I actually went back to our strategic plan and started to take a look at it and said, how does this interact with higher education? And again, I get a chance to sit in front of a lot of college and university presidents in my role, given the fact that we put a lot of capital into some brick and mortar to secure business for those. But I think it's important to understand who Aramark is, kind of what our mission, vision statements are, what our primary strategic initiatives are. And so I want to share that with you because I think it sets up what we're looking for from higher education. One, we talk about our mission as delivering experiences that enrich and nourish lives. I think you would probably say that most colleges and universities could probably take on that same mission statement also. Our values, we talk about selling and serve with passion. I think professors and universities would say that also. Frontline first, for us it means our front line. We're doing everything to improve the lives of them, giving them the resources that they need. And it's around setting goals, acting, and winning. And I hope that most of our students on the college campus have set goals for themselves and are doing things to act and win in that particular space. And then I think the other thing, we talk about integrity and respect always, and I think that's very, very important in the educational process. From a strategic perspective, we've got 4 elements that we look at, and we try to be very simplistic about this, and we call it our 4 A's, and it's around accelerating growth. And in order to do that, I think we just heard from the Fed that you need people to grow, and we absolutely need people to grow because we do have a business model that is heavily reliant on the people interaction. We're doing things from a technology standpoint. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but we are heavily reliant on people. Activating productivity, again, growth, productivity, we absolutely have to drive productivity, especially in this, full employment marketplace. It's critically important that we drive productivity because what we're seeing right now is that the wage rate growth, we cannot offset it with just productivity. So there are a number of factors that we have to have. And then we talk about attracting the best people. And I know colleges and universities absolutely try to attract the best student body and enrollment that they can. So we have another platforms that we actually look at too. The other thing, I think this applies for colleges and for us, we call it 4 C's, and it's about, we have to adapt to the evolving consumer needs to drive satisfaction. I think colleges and universities absolutely have to adapt to their consumer needs. So the client needs, in this case, I will call the client the parent, okay? Because that's the B2B relationship, because they're typically writing the check unless the student is actually paying for their education. So the client and consumer could be the same person in that case. But when we think about some of the macro as well as industry changes that are impacting our clients' needs, so it's raising the expectation, I think, for students today. I would tell you, I think they're a lot more consumer-centric than they were before on a number of different ways. And then from a competitor perspective, we look at our direct competition. I'm sure all colleges and universities have their peer sets that they're looking at, and what are they doing to differentiate themselves from their peer set? How does technology come into play? One of the things we talk about in our business is that how do we get a larger capture rate? So if you were in one of our dining establishments, we want you to eat with us every day. But we've got people like Uber Eats. All you gotta do is pick up your phone and dial up an app and you can have them deliver food. So that cuts into our ability to grow. And I think the same thing is happening in college and universities. I think technology, I've got a client, I think Arizona State is up there, they've got a huge online presence of students versus even who's on campus. And so technology is impacting the way college and universities actually interact with students today. And then I think just like Aramark, a college university has to have a great strategic plan in order to really, drive the intended purpose of the university so that they can achieve their mission as well as the outcomes they're looking for their students. Again, I'll talk about this consumer-centric, and I think colleges and universities absolutely have to be. We talk about the marketplace sets the table, and I think what's happening now, given the competition, given the fact that we are seeing, and I'm experiencing it, I just got a roll-up last week of all of our enrollment for all the schools we do business with. We have relationships with over 800 colleges and universities, and I'm seeing enrollment trends down, especially in some of our state colleges. Interesting enough, when we look at some of our private universities, they're remaining fairly flat, even though the tuition rates are fairly up. So we think about it, I'll tell you how we look at consumers from a food perspective, but I think there's an application for college and universities. The first would be quality. We talk about taste and presentation of food, but I think quality of education is critically important for that consumer or that potential student that is looking at that college or university. I think health and wellness and having a healthier campus is critically important. We're seeing it even from the food side. And I would tell you, the definition of health, I can go around this room and ask 10 of you, you'll probably define health a little bit differently. But health is critically important for this consumer today. Convenience, and this is the way people want to learn. I would tell you, I was talking to the president of the University of Florida, and he said, Victor, you wouldn't believe this. We probably have 600 students that enroll, in the school, and they take, they've got housing, they pay for housing, they pay for a meal plan, and they take all online classes. Why? They want the convenience of being on a college campus, they want to enjoy the camaraderie, but they actually want the convenience to be able to take the classes online, which is amazing. So hopefully none of my daughters will choose to take on that strategy. And also, it's speed of service, and I think this is something else that we have to kind of think about from a higher education perspective. Does it really take you 4 years? I think, clearly a lot of our college universities, the business model is based on tuition. And so keeping folks there longer probably makes sense for them. But I think, you've got a student and you've got an environment here that I think we have to think about what kind of speed of service can we actually drive in that educational process. And then the last piece I would tell you from a consumer perspective, it's about how do you personalize that experience? Okay, I think we look forward today and what you buy, what you wear. I think that learning experience has to be more personalized versus just sitting in a seat, listening to your professor, going to talk to a teaching assistant and coming back and taking a test. I think that has to evolve, because students are learning at a much different rate before. So when I think about 3 ways they will continue to win students, I think it's the same way that we win clients. And I would tell you, it's delivering a great consumer experience and a great student experience or learning experience. It's about proactively driving innovation. I hear that from my clients all the time. What are you doing from an innovation standpoint? How are you bringing technology? We mentioned cashiers are going away. I've got a building up in Brooklyn, JP Morgan Chase. We used to have 12 cashiers. We have 1 now. It's all automated. Plus, everybody uses a card. Nobody collects cash anymore. So how do you actually look at technology and how do you bring that into the classroom to be able to drive a higher level of learning experience? More importantly, how do you personalize that also? And it's about having the right team up around. And this is a big issue for me. So when people say, what keeps you up at night, Victor? Not having enough people and social media. Unfortunately, in our business, if you got a plate in front of you, you don't like it, take a picture, boom, it's out there. And unfortunately, you can't pull it out. And also, I would tell you, I think it's really, really important that there really need to be a class, whether it's in high school or when kids actually start to pick up a phone, how you utilize social media, because unfortunately, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble with that. So those are the 2 areas, but clearly, the availability of workforce is critically important, especially as a company that is looking to grow. We need people to do that. So a couple things that I'll, kind of talk about from a leadership competency standpoint before I close. We talk about, I would like to see colleges and universities have a little bit more of a leadership competency framework in terms of how leaders act and what leaders do. And just to give you a perspective in terms of what we look for, and here's what I would like our colleges and universities to help drive. I think it's helping kids and young adults think strategically. That's critically important for our business. How do you influence with impact? Because in a lot of cases, you're in a collaborative environment. And even for myself, I would expect anyone that, I would tell you when I talk to my folks, I work for them, they don't work for me. So I expect everybody to have an opinion, but you have to be able to influence with impact. So are we teaching our students how to do that in the right way? And I think even for a student, I think around college and universities, you have to focus on the customer. Again, 80% of our economy is service related. So there is a consumer that each and every one of us are touching each and every day. And we're all consumers in the room. We talk about driving for results. I think most colleges and universities are very competitive in the classroom. I think students want to do their best. There may be a couple of knuckleheads out there, but I think everybody wants to raise the bar. And it's really about, when we talk about managing courageously, and this is how do you embrace change and how do you manage conflict, because you're going to continue to have that. So I think it's important that we do have curriculums that allow our students to learn some of these softer skills that are critically important in going forward. And then it's around, can you develop others? Because I will give you a couple examples of programs we have. 2 years out, if you're working for us and you're 2 years off of campus, you are probably managing people. And so can you develop others? And once again, we want to give people the opportunity to lead very early on in their careers, if that's something that they desire to do. So it's really important. And then working with others. And I think in a lot of cases, from a learning perspective on a college campus, I know when, I'll date myself, when I was back at Boston College undergrad, I worked within a team. I played, college football. So I've always been in the team environment. And I think it's critically important because you do have to rely on your coworkers and teammates in order to achieve success. So as long as we can continue to drive those types of softer skills, but clearly driving a higher level of consumer experience, how do we utilize technology to do that are going to be really, really important going forward. And I think, I was actually looking at some information, $1.5 trillion in student loans. So I would also say, how do we make it more affordable is going to be critically important in order to ensure that we've got a diverse student body that's coming through the pipeline. And then how do we continue to work on completion rates for our students? Because you'd hate to be in a place where you're a senior and you got $1,000 that are going to prevent you from graduating. And I know a number of colleges and universities are starting to look at completion grants to say, we'll give you $1,000 if you can complete it on time. So there are a number of initiatives, and I think you can and look and reallocate resources to help our folks get through college and hopefully not get through with a bunch of debt at the end of it. So, I would just tell you, students are ultimately going to be the customer, so it's important that you drive that. I think traditional education has been very top-down, heavy-handed, sit down again, read, be quiet, don't ask questions. So I would say I think there's a lot of room for innovation in the educational process. The good news about it is that we have two programs. One's called Step Up to Leadership. It's a 10 or 12-week paid internship. So we're not one of those, 43% that don't pay. We do pay for college internships. We typically have between 400 and 600 paid interns each year, and they're given, real hands-on experience. And then we have another one where we go out and hire 400 to 600 college students each and every year, and it's called Accelerate to Leadership. And we're trying to put people on a fast track to be able to get to a leadership role very quickly, given the fact that we need those folks to help lead the businesses that we're in. So I partner very closely with colleges and universities beyond my personal agenda with the daughter. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Chellie, Rochelle Cameron, CEO of Philadelphia International Airport. We heard a little earlier today about some of the airport's contributions, but please give us your view on this and welcome to
Sure, thanks. I do have a presentation that they're going to bring up, but just as a quick lead-in, and we've got some pictures to actually illustrate this, I actually think I have the best job in the city, the absolute best job in the city. Now, the mayor, I don't know, he might argue with me a little bit. I think maybe Doug Peterson might have an edge on me, but when you think about what we do with the airport, and how we get to serve this region and connect it with the world, it's absolutely amazing. We are on track to serve about 31 million passengers this year, and that's a little bit hard to wrap your head around. So if you think about 85,000 people coming through our terminals every day, that's a little bit easier to understand. Think about the sports stadiums and what it would take to fill all of those different stadiums. That's what we serve each and every day. I lost my mic. Thank you. All right, so it looks like we've got the presentation up. Okay, so if you can go ahead and Dennis Dumpson of my staff is going to help me. So just a little bit about me. It's in the bio, but two important things. One, I love airplanes, and two, I'm having a great college football season as a University of Notre Dame graduate. But as I was saying a minute ago, I think I have the best job in the city. What you're going to see in this video are some of the interesting things that we get to do. We opened a brand new USO for our service members and their families this year. This was an event where we opened a quiet room where people would have a place to pray and reflect and get away from it all as they got on their flights. We just started a podcast. We've welcomed flights to Budapest and Prague and Mexico City this year. There's a taping of the podcast. We are able, this was recognizing the Eagles. We are able to do some of the most amazing things with opening 180 shops and restaurants. They turn over about every 5 years, to being able to celebrate all of the neat things that we have. Again, I just think I have the best job in the city. I got to hold the Eagles trophy. So our mission is proudly connecting Philadelphia with the world. Proudly connecting Philadelphia with the world. And when you think about the role that transportation plays in a region's economic development, we have an annual economic impact of about $15.4 billion a year. That's from the airport, direct and indirect. And we're responsible for about 96,000 full-time equivalent jobs when you look at everything. And it's not just the airport, it's the roads and the rail that really have to come together to allow a place to grow. And we're really excited about the role that we play in it. Go ahead, Dennis. So let's get down to the question of today. I could talk about the airport all day. Again, I think it's an amazing place to work, but let's get down to the question. So what do businesses and governments need moving forward? And one of the things that I think some of you might know in the audience, I see some friendly faces, but a lot of you may not, is that we are city-owned and operated as an airport. So I'm part of city government. So we're trying to run a business with a bottom line and responsibility to consumers within a city government structure. And that can be a real challenge, especially when you start to get to the human capital piece of things. Go ahead, Dennis. We've been thinking about a lot of these things, and when we started talking about this question, we really went into taking a look at the 5 generations in the workplace. And it's amazing to me that baby boomers today hold about 41% of workforce positions. And you might hear a little bit of different numbers depending on your source, but it's about 41% today. And in 2024, look at the numbers as they go across. Baby boomers will only have 5% of the jobs in the workplace. And that to me is pretty amazing. It gets even worse when we start to look, the silver tsunami as it's called, when we start to look at what businesses are going to have to do to prepare for that. The first thing is it's going to cost around $100 million for large businesses, and that's based on estimates from 32% of billion-dollar businesses, that they're going to have to invest in employee turnover as boomers retire over the next 5 years, just the next 5 years. The percentage of firms that actually predict a shortfall in qualified, skilled trades, part of their business, and that's a big part of my business, 74%. And finally, the number of positions that will be left vacant in 2020 because of the silver tsunami, about 31 million positions. It's about the same number of people we serve in our airport passengers every year. This is really scary stuff, not just for me, but everybody here in the room, I think, and especially my fellow panelists. I sat down with my staff and actually talked about this, though, and I want you to hear a little bit from them about what they think. There are 3 main areas we're going to talk about: the highly skilled trades, technology, and soft skills. And first, I'd like you to hear from my Chief Operating Officer, Keith Bruni.
When we think of post-secondary education, a lot of times we think of college, but we should also think about the skilled trades. Our industry is already facing shortages in aircraft mechanics, electronic technicians, and a host of other skilled trades. Over 50% of the skilled workforce today is age 45 or older, which means that there are going to be a lot of opportunities, not just for entry-level positions, but for advancement in the very near future.
So this slide shows some pictures of some of the skilled trades that you'll find at the airport. Now, think of the airport as essentially big landlords. We run a small city on the south part of the city. Well, actually, we're partly in Philadelphia County and partly in Delaware County. About 21,000 people have badges that come to work at the airport. 21,000 people. It's almost like a small city in and of itself. Of those 21,000 people that work there, only about 1,000 work for me. The other 20,000 work for, and you can see in the pictures on the slide, work for other companies. So we take care of the facilities. I have HVAC mechanics, electricians, I have building trades, I have accountants, I have everything that it takes to really operate and provide the airport facility. What I don't employ directly, but what is absolutely critical to our business is the fact that we also have those 20,000 other people who need to work, and those are aircraft mechanics and others. So let's take it down a little bit into my world. So when you look at the skilled trades at PHL, these are the numbers that we have in terms of, except for the mechanical engineers at the bottom, that's a mistake. But the only other numbers that you see on the slide are the number of different skilled trades that we have at the airport today. In the next, and there are about 179 total positions, in the next 5 to 10 years, about 49% of my skilled trades folks will be retiring. 49%. 49%. And it's not just a problem in the next 5 to 10 years, it's actually a problem today. 21% of my skilled trades positions are vacant. And I can't find enough people to fill them who have the qualifications to do what needs to happen. So if you come to the airport and your hold room is a little warm, blame it on the workforce and hiring issues that we have because we can't get enough HVAC mechanics. I'm kidding, we keep it going, but it's one of the most critical shortfalls that we have at the airport. And when you come down to the airport, it's not like you have one HVAC system that you have to know how to fix. You have to be able to do about 17 different systems and different generations of systems because of how the airport was built over time. So again, it's a problem in 5 to 10 years, it's a problem today. And on top of that, about 80% of our workforce is eligible for retirement today. We know that 49% are going to retire in 5 to 10 years, 80% could walk out the door tomorrow. Those positions are civil service positions under the city system. So there's a process that we have to go through as a city-owned and operated airport to fill them. And we're looking at some unique ways to partner with organizations to try and find trained people to come in and do those jobs. But it's a challenge on multiple levels. I hope that those of you who are in here who do post-secondary education, those of you who are representing those institutions, see a huge opportunity because it's not just the airport, there are a lot of other areas. So the next area that I'm going to talk about is really the tech area, and I have a video from our Chief Information Officer, Matt Crowley.
We live in a world that is advancing in front of our eyes each day. Technology continues to be one of the fastest growing industries. And at Philadelphia International Airport, we're constantly thinking about how we can be competitive today and in the future on a global scale. Post-secondary education is a critical step in preparing today's students to be the next generation of talented leaders. Whether they're in technology careers, the trades, or administrative roles, competency and comfort in engaging with technology are requirements to assure efficiency and success in an enterprise environment. Higher education supports government entities like ours by ensuring technology is second nature for students. Integrating technology into the way students develop their professional skill set not only supports their ability to work across an organization, but makes them more competitive in the workforce.
So by the way, they taped these interviews right outside my office. That's the view I have every day of the airfield. I get to watch the planes land when I talk about having a really cool job. That's one of the biggest pieces of it. So what you see in this slide are some pictures of technology jobs that we have today. But I can tell you within the next 5 years, technology is going to be expanding in an exponential way at the airport. We are already exploring ways that we can use biometric data to process passengers coming in and out of the country. And that's being done in collaboration with the Customs and Border Protection folks who manage that part of our airport. And I can see a day truly within the next 5, if not 10 years, but probably within the next 5 years, where biometric data will be used to get you through the TSA checkpoint as well. The concept is really called Me is Me. Why do you need a card to prove who you are if you're showing up in person and you have unique biometric features that can show who you are? And why should you have to pull out a driver's license or a passport or any kind of identification? There is a mandate in the latest FAA Reauthorization Act for biometric entry and exit into this country at large hub airports. That's Philadelphia, and you're going to see it within the next couple years. Our CIO that you saw earlier used to do software development for Microsoft, and at home when he was bored, because I don't know how he could be bored, but he was bored, he said, I was sitting there one night and I wrote a little program that will allow us to have a camera on a stick to do this biometric entry and exit if I can get access to the CBP database. And guess what? They're going to give it to him. And we're going to be doing biometric entry and exit, I would say, within the next 6 months. And it's coming to all other aspects. You talked about your cashiers. You have one at the one location that you were talking about, we can see a day where there are no cashiers. Me is me, you are you. Why do you even have to have an intermediary as a phone to pay for your food or your retail purchases? If we have biometrics, you should be, the day is coming very soon where you're just gonna look into a camera and it's gonna link to your bank account and you're gonna be able to authorize your purchase. That day is coming and is coming sooner than you think, so technology is a big area for us. Okay, one last area, and that's the business of people. And you talked a lot about the leadership skills and the soft skills that we need. I want you to hear from one of our senior HR associates, Tamara, talking about the business of people.
Here at Philadelphia International Airport, there are more than 22,000 badged employees, tenants, stakeholders, and partners who work in various capacities to serve the more than 30 million passengers and visitors who use our facility on an annual basis. In our fast-paced and exciting environment, communication is key in the day-to-day operation of our organization. Effective communication in the workplace is important because it allows managers and employees to share vital information which helps employees and companies succeed. Effective communication prevents barriers from forming around individuals within companies that may impede progress and striving to reach a common goal. In today's society, there is an increased reliance on technology and social media in our daily lives. This reliance on technology and social media has not replaced the need for us to effectively communicate with one another in the workplace. Therefore, it has become more imperative that our colleges, universities, and post-secondary institutions focus even more on educating our emerging workforce on leadership, management, communication, and soft skills for use in the workplace. I look forward to seeing the next generation of talent emerge fully prepared to confidently engage in global communities at institutions like PHL.
And so I could talk a lot about things that we're doing to develop our existing workforce, but I wanted to spend just a minute on some of these summer interns that we had this past summer. We welcomed more than 75 high school and college students to the airport in various positions. And I heard earlier that most of those internships are unpaid. All of ours are paid internships, all of them. And when we bring those folks in, I want to call them kids, that's probably politically incorrect, I shouldn't do that, but when we welcome those young adults into our workplace, one of the things that we find that they struggle with a little bit are the softer skills. So we brought in consultants this summer to do classes every Friday to teach things as basic as how do you dress in a workplace, in a professional work environment. How do you write a bullet background paper? If you're asked by your boss to write a summary of a meeting you just went to, how do you do that on one page and make it effective? So it's not just communication, it's effective communication. We had somebody come in and do those classes and went a long way. It was one of the most popular aspects of our summer internship program. So again, we're working on the existing workforce, but we're trying to work a little bit on the workforce of tomorrow. There were more than 20 sessions on professional communication and career development that we did. And just some of the universities that we partnered with were Lincoln University, Temple University, Wesleyan University, Penn State, New York University, and the School District of Philadelphia. So pretty neat internship program. So final thoughts. We need help. We need help. And I know it's not just the people in this room who are going to be able to exact change. It's going to have to be a partnership with the unions. It's going to have to be a partnership with other nonprofits in the community. And it's going to have to involve post-secondary learning institutions. But we need your help to prepare the workforce of tomorrow. I think some of the next steps that we're looking at that we would love to find partners in this room or in the community to do are to actually take a look at at the gap between what we have on board in terms of employees and what we're going to need, and be able to target specific programs that would allow us to train individuals to be able to come and work in the future. So that's it for the formal comments. Thank you for your indulgence and your patience, and I look forward to questions when we're finished.
Thank you, Chellie. Mark? All right, thank you. As I shared with the folks at dinner last night, this is my first time in any Federal Reserve Bank. I've been managing investments for 30 plus years, but honestly, I will say for my first time inside the Fed, I would have expected I might be talking about something like inflation and interest rates, not what business needs from higher education. But in any intent, here we go. So I want to start off with a personal story before I get into some of the research that honestly I didn't even think of sharing with people until hearing many of the issues that we're confronting today. But I have an aunt who lives in New Hampshire, and she runs a charity called A Light for Zimbabwe. And she developed a relationship with a young man who attended the University of Pennsylvania named Tatenda. Tatenda graduated from the University of Pennsylvania a couple of years ago with a degree in mechanical engineering and then a master's degree in robotics. And Tatenda was in the process of looking for a job and hadn't found a job yet, but he lived with us in Chestnut Hill for 9 months as he searched for a job. He eventually did get a job, and he joined Autodesk a couple of years ago. However, even though he has employment now, he is worried about his prospects and ability to stay here in the United States. And I will say, if there is ever a mind and a person that we ought to be keeping here in the United States, Tatenda is one of those people. So unfortunately, he can't go visit his mother in Zimbabwe. He can't go visit his brother in Canada. And when Autodesk recently went through cuts, he was worried that if he was cut, in fact, he was going to be forced back to Zimbabwe. So I'm changing the script a little bit here, but I would say this is maybe what business needs from government, but I would say we really need to do whatever we can in government to keep kids like Tatenda in our economy and not send them home. So this is research that, honestly, when I first heard the topic that I was going to be discussing today, I reached out to a high school friend of mine who's a leader in medical innovation and recently took a job in medical innovation for NYU. And he shared with me a research piece that was done from Cleveland State University titled From Metals to Mines, Economic Restructuring in the Rust Belt. And we are both from the city of Pittsburgh, so the story and the research definitely resonates with us. And the research is comparing here what has happened within two economies. And these two economies were Rust Belt economies, and they were in very, very similar circumstances in the late 70s and early 80s. And I think as Catherine shared earlier, when industrial clusters go into a downturn, they really go into a downturn, and that was the case within the economies of Pittsburgh and Cleveland. And you can see from the chart here that what the fortunes of the two cities have changed somewhat dramatically. And to me, the reasons why Pittsburgh has shown such success relative to Cleveland, and honestly it's success that we've seen in the city of Pittsburgh would compare favorably with a lot of other cities, not just Cleveland. A lot of that starts and ends with what happens in higher education there. So there are 3 educational institutions in Pittsburgh: Carnegie Mellon University, the University of Pittsburgh, and I'll include the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center in that equation, and Duquesne University. And they are really the primary reason for the resurgence that we've seen in the Pittsburgh economy. So one of the lessons that we can learn from what has happened to the Pittsburgh economy and what worked from higher education. And the first thing that was needed really was a change in mindset. And that mindset change happened under the leadership of longtime president of Carnegie Mellon University, Richard Sire. He was an economist by trade. And really having an economy that was so dependent on manufacturing, so dependent on steel for nearly a century,
it took a lot of persuading among politicians and leaders in the city of Pittsburgh that in fact a knowledge-based, service-based economy could thrive there without a manufacturing economy by its side. So CMU really took the lead in supplying students that were prepared for the new economy. And so new technologies, computer research, all of these things that graduates from Carnegie Mellon were focused on. And really it was a case of creative destruction in the city of Pittsburgh. Some of the traditional opportunities that kids had that were graduating to join traditional industries really didn't exist in Pittsburgh because the economy headed south so quickly there. So they were really forced to take on new types of jobs, new technologies, entrepreneurial types of things in the city of Pittsburgh, and that has definitely boosted their economy. The commercialization of a lot of what has happened in the city of Pittsburgh didn't really incubate from inside the university. It's really been a case of technology companies moving to Pittsburgh, whether it's companies like Google, Microsoft, Intel. All of these companies are moving to Pittsburgh really because of the knowledge cluster that has built within the city of Pittsburgh. And so ironically, a lot of that development has occurred within an old RJR Nabisco plant, and it's now called Bakery Square. And there's where a lot of these technology companies reside today in Pittsburgh. And the amount of business development that has occurred around Bakery Square has just been remarkable, whether it's single-family or multi-family housing, whether it's new retail that is being built in near Bakery Square, and also the restaurant scene. When I was growing up, Pittsburgh's biggest contribution to the culinary world was putting French fries and coleslaw on a sandwich to make it easier for truck drivers to eat their meals. But now the restaurant scene in Pittsburgh is really booming, and a lot of that has emanated from really leadership from higher educational institutions there. I will say that the confluence of education and research can help with the challenges of productivity growth. And we've heard a lot about the challenges of productivity growth in the United States, and generating higher productivity here is really dependent on really graduating students from higher ed that are ready for the new economy. And I will throw a related challenge out to higher ed. And Ben Bernanke talked about this, and as did Richard Harker, that it's tougher to really measure productivity and output within the new economy. So in Pittsburgh, it has turned into a meds and eds type of economy, similar to what we have here in Philadelphia. And so trying to measure productivity and output there is much more challenging. So to the extent that higher ed can help measure that productivity and output, I think it will, to me, help sustain the knowledge economy in places like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. All right, so I touched first on what was working in higher education, and I'll call this an opportunity for improvement. But I think really the bottom line message from business to higher ed, based on the scandals on this page, is we need your help. Honestly, the amount of ethics that can be taught in higher education can't be overemphasized. I think that if you want to have a company really shift away from being productive and competitive and focus more on damage control and managing public relations, then these are examples of how companies may in fact get distracted from their primary missions. We subscribe to a macroeconomic research service that looks for the three P's in terms of identifying macroeconomic trends: pronounced, pervasive, and persistent. And unfortunately, all three of the three P's are what's happening here in all of these corporate scandals. It's not a single road trader or individual. It's really a problem with the culture of these corporations. So, as one publication put it, it's not just bad apples, it's a bad orchard. So, certainly the fact that the sooner you can teach ethics and integrity in higher ed, I think reduces the likelihood that we're going to see this type of behavior within businesses over time. And I will say, working for Penn Mutual, our leadership really does promote a culture of compliance and integrity. And I can't tell you the number of times that our CEO, Eileen McDonald, has stated that there is no right way to do the wrong thing. And honestly, it's a fairly simple expression, but if you hear it enough, you really do understand that the culture at Penn Mutual is important. And I will say, it's a little bit on a related topic, and I am definitely a free market, capitalistic sort of guy. However, the emphasis in higher education on the goal of enhancing shareholder value, that's taught across most business programs. And I think enhancing shareholder value is obviously a good thing, but it can't be the sole thing that is taught in business schools, because oftentimes you might be able to justify that behavior really in the name of enhancing shareholder value. So the fact that we work for Penn Mutual and the growth that we've experienced, the growth that we've seen in another mutual company, Vanguard, we really serve our customers. Our policyholders is our primary focus. We don't have sort of that balance between serving shareholders and serving policyholders. So again, I think you're much more likely to promote a culture of integrity without an overemphasis on enhancing shareholder value. And this is a topic that has been talked about a lot today in terms of the rising cost of tuition relative to, in this case, how the minimum wage or the starting average salary for employees out of higher education. And you can see that there has been a dramatic increase in the real cost or inflation-adjusted cost of tuitions in the United States. And we've seen really stagnant wage growth for folks coming out of colleges. So what does that mean? I think it really does cut both ways. Certainly businesses need higher education to better manage the cost of higher education. And I think higher education should demand, I would say, more competitive wages out of businesses. So we are starting to see some progress in terms of wage growth among companies, and the tightness of the U.S. labor market is a big part of that. But and Amazon recently deciding to raise the minimum wage there to $15. It does seem as though we are making progress in terms of higher wages for U.S. workers, and hopefully that trend will continue. Other things that I think can help narrow the opportunity gap in the United States is, one, it isn't just the number of low or middle income students that are entering higher education, but it's also their ability to stay through it and also to graduate. And if you look at the graduation rates among low and middle income students, it is below that of high income folks. So again, that to me just exacerbates the opportunity gap in the United States. And student debt is obviously a big part of the equation in terms of basically a limiter for lower and middle income students to achieve and succeed in higher education. And like many things that we've talked about today, innovation seems to be the one solution that may help that. And I will say, after listening to so many presenters here today what is happening within Arizona State University, I will say that I'm much more encouraged that, in fact, higher education is taking a lot of positive steps to reduce the cost of education and reduce the opportunity gap in the United States. So with that, I will conclude my remarks. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Great information, candid assessments, a lot of thought in this panel's presentation as well today. So we have some time for questions. Any questions for the panel members? Yes, we think we need to get your microphone.
Since the title of this session is what can higher education do in order to work with industries, one of the problems that I have found in dealing with industries every time I try to identify large-scale internship is that there seems to be not enough trust and confidence that higher education can deliver what we say we can deliver. I'll give you an example. I've been a champion, trying to be a champion of what I call insourcing call centers. Thousands of American jobs are going to South Africa, to India, to Philippines, and we have places like Camden that are very poor cities, and we have county colleges, and I went to banks that have large call centers, and I said, what if I train these kids, teach them customer service, we give them low wage in a building that I will secure them, and I will also give them the education for free, zero cost degree, if you give me that internship, so that you can run your call center and get your stuff, your work done without sending it outside, and I can provide education. I had a hard time getting them believing me, because they think that higher education can't do it. So this is an area that I think, what can higher education do in order to win the trust of the industry?
Good question. Anybody want to, Victor?
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to what you said, because I know how we operate as a company, you know, and some universities, probably over 50% of our workforce, you know, even though there's food service workers, are students, and we rely on that, and we make sure we're paying a competitive wage in the marketplace, and we understand that. So I know from our company, we are all about giving students an opportunity, because we want them to become knowledgeable of our brand and who we are from an employment brand perspective, so that we can hopefully secure them from a full-time employment perspective. And so, you know, I think it just depends on, you know, potentially volume from a call center perspective, because I think we all have that experience where you pick up the phone and, you know, you're talking to somebody in a different country. And I think it does just relate back to, you know, can you deliver the service from a consistency perspective at a cost that can compete with outsourcing?
Any other comments?
Sorry.
That's all right, we're going to have to share the microphone, sorry about that. I guess I would just say, we have a couple of long-standing relationships with universities in the Philadelphia area, and that builds up trust over time. So for example, Widener University, we take engineering interns consistently every year, and as they've learned a lot about us and what we need in those interns, we've also learned about them and their programs, and I think that sometimes it's just building the relationship over time. So figuring out a way to get in the door and then develop the relationship.
I would say that Penn Mutual's president came out of the Drexel Co-op program, and we still have a very, very positive relationship with the students and the faculty at Drexel. So at least in Penn Mutual's case, I don't really see that lack of trust with higher education. And with regards to PMAM, or Penn Mutual Asset Management, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of Penn Mutual Life, we're a relatively small startup company with just over 30 employees, but the co-op program has been a great benefit for us. We recently made our second full-time hire out of the co-op program. So, you know, the relationship with Drexel, I think, has been mutually beneficial for us.
So I would just say one comment on that. The employers we work with many times feel the exact same thing which you've articulated. And the only way I think that we find to be most concrete is to have little successes. Begin with little successes, demonstrated little successes, and build on that. Dr. Jacobs.
Let me just chime in a little bit to try to answer that.
Let's get a microphone to you and you can identify yourself.
I'm Lee Jacobs, President Emeritus, I guess I'm President Emeritus, University of Toledo. I'm just trying to answer that a little bit. People and institutions develop trust or distrust based on historical patterns. They weren't born with those attitudes. They have experienced historical patterns. The most important thing that institutions can do is continuity and perseverance, showing again and again and again that you can be trusted, that you will deliver. The difficulty, it seems to me, however, is that universities, generally speaking, and overgeneralization I fear, universities are programmed for discontinuity. When they need a new president, they hunt a new president without any in-house training for the most part. Sometimes they do. They start all over with a new strategic plan. They don't hire a president and say, look here, would you be interested in carrying out our strategic plan?
they hire a president, and the first month they say, look here, you need to assemble some people to make a strategic plan. And on universities are programmed for discontinuity and therefore distrust.
I think one more question. Somebody hasn't asked one. Aaron, did you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Erin Marlin with the Esquire. Just wanted to ask a little more about your slide, student debt, and maybe all three panels could talk about, are you offering tuition reimbursement or student loan payments as a benefit or a perk? So my question to you is, what are you seeing in terms of employment? When you're hiring students, what kind of burden of student loans are they bringing with them?
Well, I get the sense for our two most recent hires from Drexel that they likely graduated without student debt, and that's just the sense that I have based on everything I know of them. I haven't specifically asked them how much student debt they have, but I get that sense from them. So, we've been fortunate in that regard, but, to the extent that, what employers, I think, the best thing we can do is offer competitive wages. And if people are adding value within our organization, no matter how young they might be, to make sure that they're compensated for the value that they're adding. And, I think to the extent that, wage growth does help to narrow the gap at some point in terms of the rising cost of tuition, I think that's what, how we would focus on that.
So from the import perspective, I can't really speak to student loans that folks have coming into the organization, but if they're interested in future educational opportunities, in the past few years, we've re-energized a tuition assistance program. So if someone is pursuing a degree, either bachelor's or master's, especially if it has a relationship to the work that they're doing, we're offering tuition assistance and reimbursement of tuition, which has quite frankly been a great motivator for some of our employees.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we do offer tuition reimbursement. Typically, we do have a number of folks that go back and get their master's degrees. But typically, if we are offering tuition reimbursement, then there is typically a repayment, process. So if you graduate and leave after we help pay for your college, clearly, I think we'd be looking for some reimbursement of that money. I would tell you, I think there's a big segmentation relative to some of the student employees that we bring on full time. What I would tell you is that we have Georgetown University. Not to call out any universities, but Georgetown's, the NYU's of the world, we typically don't hire a lot of kids from those schools, and from what I know of those, a lot of them don't come out with a lot of student debt. We typically hire a lot from some of our large state universities, and clearly they're a little bit more affordable than some of the more private institutions. So I think the debt level would be commensurate with that.
Okay, well, thank you. So thank you very much, panel.